This is Chris Carlson, and welcome to the DI Coach Podcast, the podcast that's committed to bringing you daily episodes to give you thoughts, ideas, resources, and interviews to help you exponentially grow your DI sales. In today's episode, I'm joined by Todd Shield, Regional Vice President, Petersen International Underwriters. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you having me on today.
Well, Todd, you are obviously my go-to guest because this might be the fifth or sixth time I've had you as a guest on one of my podcasts.
This, I think, is number 5. It's been a while, and we have definitely a lot to catch up on here.
I'm looking forward to it. So, Todd, let's start out with maybe you telling us about the Todd Shield insurance journey.
Well, like a lot of others in the insurance world, it was all by mistake. I went to college on for a biology major, and look where it's got me. It's got me as a sales guy in the insurance world. I actually got my start in insurance actually due to my wife. Many people don't know that. She was a claims analyst at Assurity Life in Lincoln, Nebraska at the time. And I was working for the state of Nebraska in their accounting division. And we were right across the street from each other. And she said, "You kind of got a dead-end job over there, not much room for growth over there. You should come get your foot in the door here at Assurity and work your way up." So I actually did. I got started in their policy services division, and then moved over to what they launched as what we call a platinum unit, where we were kind of a concierge service to our top tiered producers and BGAs. And then actually moved over to the sales side a few years later and ran the disability department for them on the individual side. So after about 10 and a half years at Assurity, I got a call from Petersen International saying, "Hey, you want to talk?" Absolutely, all day long. If I'm gonna make a move, I want to go to a world-class organization, and have been at Petersen in May. It'll be 5 years.
Wow, it's hard to believe it's been that long.
Yeah, it's went fast for sure.
Well, Todd, there's a fun fact that a lot of people don't know about you, but you were a former minor league umpire. Is that correct?
Yeah. I did some minor league baseball. And you want to talk about no money and lack of a job availability to move up the ranks. That's some tough sledding there. I always laugh when the baseball players would gripe and be like, "Oh, we've been on a 12-day road trip, and hey, listen, guys, you sat in the bus. You didn't even have to drive. We have to drive ourselves as umpires everywhere we go, and we never have a home game. So I don't want to hear about it." So. But yeah, no, it was a great experience. I would never change it. Actually, in my office right now, I've got pictures of my umpiring days and a picture from my professional umpire school that I went to, our big class photo that we took.
All right, who was the biggest pain in the butt you ever ran across?
Oh, that's like saying, well, who's the biggest pain from an insurance standpoint? I don't know if I can name any names, but there were a handful of them. Most of them were managers that were just tired and fed up and needed a few more years of a paycheck and just kind of had lost the love. Those were always the grumpy guys.
Oh, geez. Well, I tell you what. So my advice is when Todd gets back to being out in the field, make sure you buy him a beer and get some umpire stories.
There we go. I like that.
Well, Todd, you'd mentioned that you've been with Petersen International Underwriters. We affectionately call it PIU for
Yes.
5 years. Tell us a little bit about PIU.
Petersen International Underwriters is a cover holder for Lloyds of London. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Lloyds market and how this whole thing works, you cannot write directly with Lloyds. You have to find a cover holder, or we're technically a managing general underwriter on behalf of Lloyds of London. So we are your avenue to get to Lloyds of London for accident and health. Petersen International is almost 40 years into the cover holder world, and they are the largest and the longest tenured cover holder for accident and health within the United States. So they've been doing it a very, very long time. And if you don't know, also, Petersen International is also a very family-centric organization. They are in the 3rd generation, and in the summer, actually the 4th generation for an internship of Petersen's being in the business. So it's a very tight-knit organization, and definitely a lot of fun to work for.
Obviously, the PIU reputation is second to none. Well, Todd, let me talk about the elephant in the room, COVID-19. What impact did COVID-19 have on PIU or the Lloyds marketplace in 2020?
That's a great question. It affected everybody, and I think it affected them, differently. There was good and there was bad. Obviously the bad piece of it was for us as regional vice presidents. Our travel got shut down. I was used to being on the road 2 out of the 4 weeks of the month, and that turned into being on Zoom calls 2 of the 4 weeks a month, and making sure that even though you were on a Zoom call, that you were still trying to provide good value, bringing up new ideas, and asking good questions in order to keep people intrigued. Because as we all know, with these Zoom calls, we've been on enough of them now. It's really easy to lose focus and concentration there. I think, Chris, the biggest factor outside of COVID, which did create its own issues. It sure didn't help matters. But you may not be aware, or others on the listening to the cast today may not be aware, that Lloyd's is going through a hardening of the market. And I think that actually played a bigger role than what COVID did. And this hardening of the market, I kind of use the analogy of the real estate market. Right now, it's more of a seller's market than it is a buyer's market. So London gets to dictate maybe a little bit more of the terms. They get to dictate benefit amounts, things like that. Where previously we were going to them and saying, hey, we really need this and this and this and this. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem whatsoever. So things, to people who aren't dealing with it on a real regular basis, you wouldn't really know. But for myself and others that are within the Petersen and Lloyd's world, we are seeing kind of a small clamping down of offers and terms and things like that. Of course, we still do all of the fun things that nobody else can do. We'll get offers on the table for you when you don't think that they can even happen. But I think that played even a bigger role for us than even the COVID-19 did. But COVID-19 sure didn't help matters.
And then your results in 2020?
Yeah, so results in 2020, actually from a sales numbers standpoint, they were fantastic. For as long as I've been with the company, we actually have broken our all-time sales record each and every year, 2020 included. So we still had a fantastic year from a sales perspective, and looking forward to an even better 2021.
Well, what does 2021 look like for PIU?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think from my territory, and I'll speak on behalf of Lori Boggs, who's our East Coast rep for the company as well. I think that we've got a lot of great things in the hopper right now. A lot of where we've been seeing big cases and large opportunities happens to be within the guaranteed issue market. So we're going to continue to focus on those things, obviously not giving up on the individual cases. I'm running into some really large individual cases too, and running into new producers. I think from my standpoint, I think over the last 6 to 9 months, having the COVID issue and not being on the road has really helped me reach out to new producers. And we're going to continue to do that and put a focus on that and spread the word to those who don't know about us or those who haven't really utilized PIU to their fullest potential so far. So I think that's what 2021 holds, is getting a lot of these newer producers up and running and continue to work on big cases with existing producers.
Hey, Todd, let's talk about that for just a second. Acquiring new producers. But to your point, traditionally, you've gotten on an airplane, you've gone to a city, and you've run around and you've met with people, and whether it's a coffee, lunch, dinner, drinks, midday, whatever it happens to be. How has that changed in terms of effectiveness of getting these new producers the old way, trying to convince them to meet with you physically versus meet with you over a Zoom call?
I think really it's been easier to try to get on Zoom meetings or just conference calls with them during this time than it ever was to try to meet with them face to face. I think that, and myself included, you meet with somebody face to face, they want something right away, right? And there's going to be an expectation that, well, if I meet with this person, that I owe them business, or that I'm going to need to do this, and then they're going to call and harass me if I don't, and so on and so forth. I think that has really laid down that wall for them, and just being able to meet on a Zoom call or on a conference call has really relieved a lot of pressure for them, and I think they're more willing to do it, believe it or not. I don't know if you agree with that with others that you've spoken with, but I found it easier to actually get in touch with people over COVID, because they know that we're not going to ask for a face-to-face meeting at this time.
Yeah, I think it's that, Todd. Plus, let's face it, they're not quite as busy as they were. And what I mean by that doesn't mean they didn't have meetings, but they're not in the car. Like if you go to LA, spend 2 hours just getting to one appointment,
Right.
right? So
Right.
they freed up a lot of time. And I heard something recently, and this really I think can help our listeners to change their mindset. People talk about Zoom fatigue, and certainly if you're in a big corporation and you have Zoom meetings all day long because you're working out of your house, that's one thing. But Zoom meetings for salespeople or marketing people is what the person said is look at it as a transportation system.
Hmm.
And basically, Todd Shield is transporting himself into that producer's office in, let's just say, Minneapolis. And if you think that way, it changes your perspective of Zoom. Now, again, I want to be very clear. This is, the marketing people, the salespeople, not the ones that are in constant Zoom meetings because they're not, working in an office. But if you think that way, it can really change your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Before this, I can't tell you that I could be in Detroit and Dallas and Phoenix all in the same day, right?
Well, other than the corporate jet, sometimes you could do that, right?
Oh, I wish. Oh, I wish.
Hey, Todd, let's talk about opportunities. What do you think the biggest opportunities are for producers in the PIU Lloyd's marketplace?
Yeah, I always tell people our goal is if, I want to, when I do Zoom meetings and training meetings, that I want to create a habit. They don't have to memorize everything we do, and I don't expect them to. But if I want to create the habit of if a producer hears the word no because of underwriting issues, or they can't get the amount of coverage that they're looking for, then that's when they need to pick up the phone and let's talk about that situation. And then it's our job at Petersen to go find you the correct solution or get something on the table when you previously didn't have an offer. I think opportunities that are out there obviously are within the DI world. There's no getting around it. Disability underwriting is tough. So we can help out with all of the declines. People forget that we do a lot of impaired risk. Obviously, the upper incomes, that's where we spend the majority of our time. And with those upper incomes, a great opportunity, and I kind of mentioned it a minute ago, but is that guaranteed issue space. We will go guaranteed issue for high income earners that have existing coverage with as low as 3 lives. So the numbers are very low, and we'll put benefit. People will say, well, how much benefit are you really willing to go? Will you do an extra $10,000 or $15,000? Yeah, but we can actually go up to $250,000 per month per person before we need to go talk to our friends in London and ask for more. So the numbers are out there. These premiums are high. We know, Chris, as people that have been in the DI industry for a couple of days now, that these disability products are extremely persistent, but a guaranteed standard issue program is a notch above that because somebody leaves, somebody retires, they're promoting or they're hiring somebody new into that position. So these policies really never go away with somebody who's doing good policy follow up and staying in touch with their clients. So I think that's a huge opportunity outside of the DI world. A lot of people forget that we have a tremendous focus also within the business life insurance world. We're not allowed to call life insurance, so we had to come up with a catchy name. We call it failure to survive. And that would be all of our business life insurance products, buy, sell, key person, contract guarantees, loan indemnification, so on and so forth. It's a quick, easy policy for those that need coverage now because we can issue it in 48 to 72 hours, or for those that have health history and aren't able to get an offer or have a highly rated offer from traditional carriers. So I've seen some tremendously nice premiums from that standpoint. Sometimes people are in need of 30, 50, 75, even $100 million worth of coverage, believe it or not. And so, as you can imagine, you get into those types of numbers, the premiums happen to be outstanding. So, I think obviously keeping our focus on the DI front is huge. Looking at guaranteed issue offers is a tremendous opportunity. The sales cycle is longer for those, but they sure do pay out. And the business life insurance side has been very good to us as well. So I think those are some fantastic opportunities for us, 2021 and beyond.
Well, Todd, you mentioned GSI when we tend to think of GSI for individual disability insurance. Do you do GSI on business products?
We do GSI and business products, yes. So again, the key person, buy sells, business overhead, loan indemnification, contract guarantees. Our business life insurance actually starts at 5 lives or more, where the individual GSI is 3 lives or more. So it's still there, but we just need a couple more lives to get there.
I think that's something that everybody should pay attention to because there's lots of situations where, you need that, especially in the buy sell world where the domestic carriers are pretty limited on their issue limits.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to go to a Lloyd's as an example to get because they can get almost anything they want on the life side, and I think it's a great complement to the domestic carriers on the DI buy sell.
I agree. And if I could add something else in here too, Chris, I think from a business disability standpoint, especially during the whole COVID thing, I mean, it's still ongoing, but I had many more conversations turn into key person opportunities because of COVID. You know, these business owners have seen what a loss of revenue can do to their operation. And the conversation can easily be tweaked to say, well, what happens if that loss of revenue is because of you or this person or that person because they're too sick or hurt to actually come to work? And oh, by the way, did you know we can protect against that? Now you've opened up their eyes. So I ran into a bunch of key person plans and opportunities during the whole COVID situation, and many of them are still ongoing.
Well, Todd, let me ask you this. What are the biggest misconceptions about contracts sold through Lloyd's of London?
Yeah, that they're not real, that there's always some sort of out clause or things like that. That's not the case. Lloyd's is a surplus lines carrier, and many people think that they need to have a special license even to offer what we do. And that's actually not the case. That would actually be more on the property casualty side, where you would have your surplus lines license. Your life and health license will be able to have you offer any of the products that we have within our portfolio. What a lot of people also too don't realize, Chris, is they think that Lloyd's is Lloyd's, and the reality is that it's not. And I say that because we'll just use Principal Financial as an example. If you call a BGA in Texas and you call a BGA in Detroit and you call a BGA in Des Moines, right where they're at, right? And you say, I've got this particular client, they're 40 years old, they do this, they make this amount of money, you're going to get the same number back every time, the same offer across the board, right? That's not actually how it works within the Lloyd's market. So Lloyd's is not Lloyd's. We do have competitors that are out there, and you can come to us with a different person. Let's say they're 45, they're making $1 million. They do this for a living, whatever it might be. And you come to Petersen with it and you take it to a competitor and you're going to get 2 different offers, 2 different benefit amounts, 2 different premiums because we deal with our own set of syndicates or underwriting teams in London, and they deal with a different set of syndicates and underwriters in London as well. So the differences within risk within Lloyd's make up different premium. They make up different offers. So just because you have a Lloyd's quote doesn't mean that it's going to be the same thing across the board.
I think it's something that's very important to remember. Todd, this is the thing that I hear a lot from producers, and I know, and I want you to tell me the answer because it's a good answer that I've heard from you and from Tom and from Lori over the years. People say, well, the commissions aren't as good through PIU as it is through a principal. Can you address that longer term commission schedule with a PIU versus maybe a domestic carrier?
Right. So people look at our commission schedule and they go, oh, well, okay. Here's what we need to keep in mind is that we are managing general underwriter on behalf of Lloyd's. Petersen does not retain any of that risk. That being said, most people now understand why our commission schedule is set up like it is because most of that money is going across the pond, right? And the kicker though is that if we look long term at this, even though we're paying lower commissions, at a street level, you might see that a company goes 60% first year and then 15% year 2 and then 3% year 3 through 10. And after year 10, they stop. Okay. I don't know if that's an actual schedule or not, but that's pretty close to what they're doing out there. Our schedule is pretty much level and it never stops. So as long as that policy is in force, 10, 20, 30 years from now, however long it might be, you're getting paid on that thing the entire time. So over the course of time, and for those that are well versed in the disability world, they know the money is within the renewal stream, not the first year commissions like a term life insurance policy or UL or whole life plan, right? These are meant to pay out over a long course of time. And so that's where we end up winning in the long term versus those short term gains. And if you think about it, some of these guaranteed issue premiums, I know that we just got done with one, and it was over $200,000 of annual premium. Would you like to get paid on $200,000 of annual premium each and every year for the next 25 years or more?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. Plus, what you said earlier, Todd, is that you always have new enrollees. So that
Yeah.
250 starts to edge up to 260, 270, 300,
Yeah.
350, all of which of that, what I would call level compensation over time, it exceeds what you would get from a domestic carrier.
Right. And so you bring up another good point too that triggered in my head here too, Chris. Many of the people listening that aren't familiar with Petersen and with Lloyd's may not understand that by parliamentary law, our policies last up to 5 years. They can't go any further than that. Some people think it's a Petersen thing. Some people think it's a Department of Insurance issue. No, that's actually set by Parliament actually a couple hundred years ago. And so every 5 years when these groups renew, they get new attained age rates. So not only do you have pretty much a level commission schedule, but you also get a pay raise every 5 years because they get new attained age rates.
Something for everybody to remember. Well, Todd, you talked about your baseball artifacts in your office. I know you have a crystal ball in your office. What I want you to do is look deep into that crystal ball and tell us what the next 3 to 5 years looks like for the DI industry, be it domestic or the Lloyd's market.
Yeah, no, great question there. As I gaze deeply into this and see the Wizard of Oz, what I see are tremendous opportunities out there. I know that you've said it time and time again that the industry couldn't be more ripe for the picking, and I completely agree with that. I think that we're also going to find people who have been in more life insurance focused areas are going to start peeking over the fence at the DI world because of the renewal streams of commissions for them. So I think the opportunities are out there. I also think too that we're going to see over the next few years, and this is my personal opinion, I think we're going to see a tremendous spike in the amount of business disability that is being sold. I think that carriers on the traditional side are going to change some of their criteria from underwriting, their limits, things like that. I think there's going to be some wholesale changes that happen to be made on that side, which will boost production. And, even though that higher limits and looser underwriting and things like that does take away from what we do from a Lloyd's and Petersen perspective, it helps the industry. And if the industry wins, we will win too, because we'll find other opportunities and other avenues out there that these traditional carriers still can't tackle at that time. So that's what I see. I think that the disability world is going to grow. I think guaranteed issue is going to get stronger and stronger across the board for everybody. If you aren't looking into these opportunities now, I highly recommend that you start doing so. But I think that the business end of it is going to really pick up in the next 3 to 5 years too. I
think that's great insight. Well, Todd, we're at the conclusion of the 5th time I've had you on my show, so I'm kind of looking forward to the 6th time I have you on my show.
Absolutely. Any time at all. I love visiting with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk today.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Todd.
You're welcome.
If you're serious about writing more DI in 2021, check out the resources available on the DI Coach website, www.thedicoach.net, and make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode.